All right, this is Graham Matthews standing here with.
Travis Air Gordon.
So over the course of your career, what have been your experience with injuries?
Injuries, I've only been wrestling now for about a year. I've had 8 staples in my head. I've had a dislocated shoulder, hairline fracture in my left wrist, and 2 concussions.
What's the first thing that goes through your mind when you suffer like a concussion? Because it's something that's gotten a lot of obviously mainstream coverage recently.
It's very scary. At first, you're like, you love this. You're like, oh, I still want to wrestle. But then it's like, you want to you got to look at the medical side of it. And you're like, maybe it's not okay for me to wrestle, because what happens if you go to sleep that night and you don't wake up? You got to think long term. Everybody in this business says it's a marathon, not a sprint. So you can't do everything in one day. Missing one show because of a concussion or a 1 month because of a shoulder injury is not going to really hurt your career. So you got to think longevity. So you just really got to really take care of yourself, take care of your body, because the fans understand. They understand what we do. We're going to get hurt. So if you just explain that, you say, hey, I'm not going to make it today because of this reason, they're not going to be like, oh, boo, you suck, we hate you. They're not going to do that. They understand.
So the fans understand that kind of aspect from it. When you take a show off or something due to injury, how does it affect the other side of your life, your personal life, when you go to work with your other job? How does it affect that side of your life?
It really depends on your day job you have outside of wrestling. Some of them don't have day jobs, some of them do. Just really depends on the job. Like, some people will sit at a desk, so if they hurt their shoulder, it's not a big deal. But some people, if they're like electricians or like something more where they're like hands-on, then it's obviously going to benefit their day-to-day job as well. Like, let's say you're a satellite technician. If you break your leg, then you're obviously not going to be able to climb a ladder anymore, so you're going to be out of regular work too. So it's just one of those things, like I said, you just got to take care of it, man.
So what advice would you have for people that are currently wrestling, that would you say, in terms of how you could prepare for injuries and stuff like that? Or is it something you really can't prepare for?
Stretch. Just think smart. Think of something before you're going to do it. Be like, hey, what are the possibilities going to happen if I do this? You just really got to think, is it worth it? It's another one, because obviously everybody wants to do it for the pop. So you're like, is this going to be worth it for the pop I'm going to get? So then you got to think of your ability. Obviously, if you don't think you can do something, you probably shouldn't do it. And if you're guessing yourself, like, this might not be a good idea, guess what? 9 times out of 10, it's not a good idea. You shouldn't do it.
And last question for you, too. When you suffer something like an injury, like a concussion, or like the 8 staples in your head, like you said, and you go home and tell your family or friends or whatever, do they understand that? And if they don't, what can you say that can really help them kind of put it in perspective?
Half do, half don't. Some understand it. They're like, hey, that's the risk you take. And others like, why do you keep doing it then if you're just going to get hurt? It comes down to, you love this business. If you love this, you know the consequences. You know what's going to happen. But you just don't give up. You keep on that horse riding. You know what I'm saying?
So it's all about basically the passion and your future career and stuff like that. You do it because you love it. And
I mean, you could get one concussion and be like, you know what, I got hurt. I don't want to do this no more. Or you could be like, hey, I got one concussion. I need to be smarter about what I do in the ring.
Exactly. Just kind of stuff to keep in mind, in future career and stuff like that.
Exactly. And me being a high flyer, I run a higher risk, and I know that, so I try to plan everything a little bit safer. Like, hey, if I do this move, maybe it's not a good idea. Tonight I did a table spot. I saw him on the table and did a corkscrew moonsault. I could have overshot, I could have undershot, I could have slipped and fell. I had to think about that. Think about everybody else's safety as well, the fans, my opponent. So obviously we're not going to go in there and try to kill each other.
And one last obvious question too. I mean, you think it like that when as a high flyer right there, rather. Is there more of a risk for you for injury? I mean, that's kind of an obvious question, or is it? Because I mean, you see people in WWE nowadays all the time suffer injuries basically from kind of just a turn of the ankle, stuff like that. Yeah. So is there more of a risk for you than other people, or is that kind of a common misconception?
It is a higher risk because me personally, I land on my knees harder than other people do because most people aren't jumping off the top rope. A lot of high spots where my head's going, I'm doing flips, so if I do a flip wrong, I can land on my neck, break my neck. So it really just comes down to that. So I think, I do run a higher risk of injury than most people.
Oh, great. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it, man.
Of course, man. Anytime.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, dude.